back, everybody. This is meeting number 28 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. Pursuant to the order referenced Tuesday, February 16th, the committee resumes our clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-10, an act to amend the Broadcasting Act and to make related and consequential amendments to other acts. Okay, we're doing this, of course, virtually.
Mr. Chair, I would wish to move a point of order.
One moment, please. Ms. Harder, first of all, welcome to committee. Good to see you on a Friday afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Sims.
And carry on with your point of order.
Awesome, thank you. Mr. Chair, it's come to my attention that this committee was provided with a charter statement from the Minister of Justice, and that this charter statement was prepared on the bill based on its original form on November 3rd. At that point in time, our party was largely in favor of making the proposed amendments to the Broadcasting Act and other acts in order to modernize them and create a level playing field between streaming services like Netflix and the Canadian broadcasters. At that point in time, the Justice Minister's charter statement was in good standing. However, that was before the bill was amended. And as you know, there are some significant changes that have since taken place. One of the things that was stated in the Justice Minister's charter statement was, and I'll quote directly, he said, Clause 3 would specify that the Act does not apply in respect of programs uploaded by unaffiliated users, for example, you and I, to social media services for sharing with other users, and in respect of online undertakings whose only broadcasting consists of such programs. That is the end of his quote. When the bill was amended, however, to remove Clause 3, the portion that I just read his opinion on, the entire scope of the bill was changed. And given that the entire scope of the bill has now changed with the removal of that clause, the statement no longer stands accurate. Last Friday, those changes were made, taking away the protection for individual users, again, such as you and I. The things that we post on Facebook, the things that we post on YouTube, the things that an aspiring artist posts, the cat video that my grandmother posts in order to share with her friends and engage with them. When this change was made, it now removes the protections that were once offered to those individuals who use these platforms.
Ms. Harder, just 1 second. I appreciate the recognition of the content that you're providing here with the removal of the clause.
Yes.
Can you get a little bit more specific how this is counter to?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The removal of Section 4.1 from Bill C-10 fundamentally changes the legislation and dissolves the ground on which the charter statement stood to justify charter compliance. Therefore, the original charter statement should be considered null and void if this committee wishes to do diligence. Therefore, I would propose, I should say, to you that we need a new charter statement from the Justice Minister based on the transformational edit that was done on Friday. Mr. Chair, I believe that this is extremely important, and here's why. It's important because it's about protecting Canadians and their freedom.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
One moment before everyone starts talking for the sake of our interpreters. Ms. Harder, can I get you to summarize what you're reading right now very quickly, and then I'll go to Ms. DeBruzen. So,
Mr. Chair, I thank you. I do, if you'll just oblige me for a moment here, I do need to outline my case, and then I am happy to summarize or to conclude.
Ms. Harder, please, just very quickly, because it sounds like you're going into the arguments of the content of what you're talking about. I need you to, again, be specific as to the points you're trying to make. Why I'm assuming you're trying to withdraw what we're doing right now. Is that correct? Or cease what we're doing right now? Is that correct?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
In just a moment
very quickly.
here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chair, again, I just would ask, at the end of the day, this is about Canadians. This is about standing up for their charter rights and freedoms. And so I understand that this committee wishes to get to clause by clause. However, I believe that in the best interest of Canadians and respecting their charter rights, the bare minimum we can do is take the next 3 minutes and allow me to explain why this is of such crucial importance. Protecting Canadians' rights and freedoms and making sure.
Okay, hold on, everyone. 1 moment. Ms. DeBruzen, I'm going to let you step in. Go ahead.
Thank you. So we are midway through a clause by clause, and in this virtual world, it's a little bit different than when we normally do it, and we would be through it quite a bit more quickly. But we are still midway through in this clause by clause process, and I am not sure what this member is seeking to bring forward, but I don't believe that she has clearly stated what she wants to do, and it seems at this point that it is ahead, putting the cart ahead of the horse as far as what we're working on.
I'll go to Mr. Reyes.
Merci, Monsieur le
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To answer my honorable committee member, Ms. Mabruzen, I think Ms. Harder has the privilege of taking the floor in the committee. She has something to bring to the table. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms, freedom of expression, to our mind, has been cast aside by changes that were adopted in committee by removing a certain section. I think she deserves a few minutes to shed light on her point of view. I think this is the minimum that we can do as a committee, to listen to her thoughts, her arguments, and that way we'll be able to take decisions together afterward. And Mr. Chair, if I may, she absolutely has every right.
I'll get to her point, but I have to move on from you in order to do that. So I see what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. But let me, before I get back to Ms. Harder, I have a question. Were you about to move a motion?
Mr. Chair, I will be seeking support from the committee.
Well, I can't do that on a point of order. The standing orders states that you have to point of order and then tell the committee why we're out of bounds, as it were. You
Mr.
can't
Chair,
make a motion within that. One moment, Ms. Harder. One moment, Ms. Harder. I'll finish very quickly. So within that, according to the standing orders, I can't. So I'm just going to preempt by saying you can't move that motion, right, or seek the permission of the committee, as you say, within the realm of a point of order, which you're doing. But that's why I want you to get to the reason why we're going outside of the rules of this particular committee. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I thank you. I understand that that is your perspective. Perhaps in just a moment you can confer further with the clerk. I would like to outline context for the request that I'm going to make to the committee, and I believe that it is appropriate for me to do so on a point of order.
I'll tell you what, you just mentioned about confer with the clerk. How about I do that first, and then I'll come back to you.
Well, you don't.
I do that.
With
Okay.
Mr. Sims, Mr. Chair, I respect your request. However, you don't yet know what my request is. So if I could continue outlining the context, as is my privilege as a member of Parliament for Lethbridge and as a current member of this committee.
I understand what your privileges are, Ms. Harder. But the thing is, on a point of order, you're going to describe now why, I'm assuming, why this point of order and why we're outside the realm of the rules, standard, the procedures of the House of Committee. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the original intent of this legislation was to modernize the Broadcasting Act. However, by removing this section, Clause 3 or Section 4.1 of Bill C-10, there's a significant difference in what this is now. And I would argue that it potentially impedes upon the freedoms of Canadians that are granted to them under Section 2B of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Social media platforms are the new public square.
It's where people engage in
conversations.
Point of order.
Sorry. Ms. Harder, this is the third time now. I need you to get to the point of, I'm trying to give you as much latitude as I can, but we're arguing the content of which has taken place in a vote that took place. If you wish to do them, there are ways by which you can move a motion, seek consent. Are you asking to revisit something that was done prior in this committee? May I ask that?
Mr. Chair, I understand the desire to rush through. I understand the desire for the member who is for the members of the governing party to move this through as quickly as possible. And I understand that my voice is that that there's an attempt to squelch my voice right now. I would ask to be given the opportunity to speak and to make the points that are appropriate to make at this point in time, and then to seek the committee's support.
Ms. Harder, I'm not trying to squelch you. I could have cut this off a long time ago. I'm just trying to get to the point here because you did call up a point of order. And as chair, I have to make this flow the way it should, as given to us by the standing orders. So I'm trying to figure out now, if you want to do a motion as such, there's a place to do that. But when you bring up a point of order, I can't, and I see Ms. DeBruzen, did you want to respond?
No, simply to say that it had veered into debate, and I just wanted
Okay,
to.
yeah. All right. Sorry, Mr. Brusen, but I don't want to further that debate. So, Ms. Harder, now that I've heard what I think I know where you might be going. I'm assuming in this particular case, again, I repeat, you want to revisit something that's already been addressed by clause here. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, if you'll oblige me,
I think I have.
Thank you, and I appreciate your patience. What I would like to do is seek unanimous consent to move the following motion.
Sorry, Ms. Harder, you're in the middle of a point of order. I can't let you move a motion in the middle of a point of order. So but for the sake of fairness, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to suggest something, but I have to confer with this table staff before I do that. Okay? How about I do that first, as you mentioned earlier, as you recommended. I will be as quick as I can, and we'll come back and we'll reconvene. But now I know that you wish to propose a motion you seeking unanimous consent. I'm going to come back to you and see what I can do on that particular ruling.
Mr. Sims,
okay.
If I may, very quickly, as you go and approach the clerk and confer on this, I would contend that there is a significant issue here with the removal of Section 4.1.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt.
And we must do our best as the members of this committee to contend for Canadians and their freedoms.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I really do. But I have to go now and try to figure out how we're going to fit what you want to do within the confines of the standing orders of the House of Commons. So please, if I could just suspend just for a few moments, I'll come back to you with the appropriate way of doing this, as you wish to do. All right, folks, we're going to suspend for a few minutes. I'll be back shortly. to this meeting. I want to apologize for those listening abroad on this other cast here. We had some technical difficulties as we went down, and it seems to be fixed. Everything seems to be okay. We'll keep you posted. We'll keep moving along. So, Ms. Harder, I may have a suggestion for you. The reason why I couldn't let you expand on the points that you were making is because in the beginning you put up your hand and I asked if you were on a point of order. You said yes, we move from there. So that's probably as much as my fault as yours. That being said, if you wish to bring up the points that you wish, you may proceed when the debate begins, when this procession begin, when the proceedings begin. I'm going to call for in just a few moments G10. And which reminds me to tell everyone, don't forget about the raised hand function on the side, because otherwise it makes life
Mr.
a lot
Chair.
easier for me and everyone else. One moment, please. It makes life easier for everyone technically, and let's not try to talk over each other because of interpretation. It makes life extremely difficult, and also for our folks at Hansard, it makes it very difficult. Ms. Harder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, it is my understanding, based on the fabulous green book that we have that guides the procedures of these things. If you look to page 1064, you will see a section that outlines the protocols with regards to unanimous consent. It's my understanding that I have the ability to to seek unanimous consent to move a motion. And if I'm granted that unanimous consent, then I am able to move a motion during a point of order.
If you,
So
okay.
I would wish,
If you,
then,
one
Mr.
moment,
Chair.
one moment, and you just nod in my direction if I'm getting this right. You could seek unanimous consent on a point of order to proceed with your motion, is what you're asking. I guess
can seek,
you can
correct.
do that, or you can withdraw your point of order, and then we can launch into G10, of which I would advise you to raise your hand at that point, if you wish to discuss what you wish to discuss. I'm not playing. I'm just trying to make things easier for you because I know you want to get your opinion in. Would you wish to withdraw your point of order, or do you want to seek unanimous consent to proceed with a motion within your? I'm sorry. Is just what I'm saying to you is very clearly. You can withdraw the point of order, and we can begin debate of which you could be recognized from the floor.
If we begin the debate and I am recognized from the floor, it is within the context of clause 10.
Not necessarily.
Is that correct?
Not necessarily. I'm pretty easy for the way things proceed here. I can be quite flexible in these things. If we proceeded clause by clause and you raise your hand, I'll give you the floor. I'm not trying to trick you, Ms. Harder. I'm not trying to be deceptive
Okay,
here.
Mr.
I'm just trying to make this path easier for you.
Mr. Sims, I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to wait until you get started with clause by clause.
I'm assuming you're withdrawing your point of order?
In good faith.
Indeed. Okay, folks, we're back to the meeting. Thank you very much. Sorry for the technical difficulties there in between. It happens from time to time. It's the first time it happened to us. So as you know, we're picking up clause by clause once more. Don't forget about your raised hand function, as I mentioned earlier. And now we left off last time on G10 of clause by clause. Ms. Harder.
Mr. Sims, thank you so much for giving me the floor.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, look, I understand that this committee, I believe, is doing its best to get through this legislation quickly and to move it to a place where, of course, it can be voted on in the House of Commons. But I do believe that there are some things that do need to be considered before getting to that point. As I've outlined previously, Clause 3 or Section 4.1 was removed from the legislation last week. When that took place, it changed the nature of this bill. There is a charter statement that was provided by the Justice Department under the name of the Justice Minister. That charter statement determines whether or not this bill, this piece of legislation, Bill C-10, would be in agreement or within the purview of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That statement is now null and void because a significant portion of the bill was removed last week. That being the case, I do believe that this committee needs to seek another statement with regards to the charter and whether or not the charter rights of Canadians are in fact being respected within the new outline provided within this bill. I would draw the committee's attention to a few opinions or viewpoints that have been offered by experts. I think most notably the former CRTC Commissioner Peter Menzies said that this legislation was, and I quote, doesn't just infringe on free expression, it constitutes a full-blown assault upon it and through it, the foundations of democracy. Mr. Chair, that is an incredibly damning statement. And that is in regard to this piece of legislation as it stands now, because that clause was removed last week. That being the case, I do believe that this committee needs to take the responsibility of seeking another charter statement. I think, the argument has been made by some members at this table and other members within the House of Commons when this has been raised as a point of question within question period. The statement has been made by the governing party that Canadians shouldn't worry. They would, there would never be an imposition on their freedom and what they post on social media. But at the end of the day, if it's not there, it's not there. In other words, if the protection isn't granted, then there's no protection. It's that simple. If the protection is not outlined in this legislation, then there is no protection for Canadians. And we're talking about a regular component of their daily lives. We're talking about a video that they post of their cats. We're talking about a video that they post of their kids. We're talking about a conversation that they're having with a friend on a social media platform. It is a new form of public square. And based on the charter, our right to freedom of expression should not be imposed upon. I would argue, and many other experts have argued, that they are being imposed upon. Now, that being the case, I do believe that we need to seek a new charter statement based on this legislation as it stands now. So I am wanting to move a motion for this committee's consideration. And if I may, I would like to read that into the record.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That given that the deletion of section 4.1, clause 3 of Bill C-10 would extend the application of the Broadcasting Act to programs uploaded by users of social media services, which in turn could violate paragraph 2B of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and given that the current charter statement required under section 4.2 of the Department of Justice Act with respect to the potential effects of Bill C-10 directly states that, quote, users of social media who upload programs for sharing with other users and are not affiliated with the service provider will not be subject to regulation, as part of its argument that Bill C-10 respects section 2B of the charter. The committee, A, requests that the Minister of Justice produce an updated charter statement under section 4.2 of the Department of Justice Act with respect to the potential effects of Bill C-10 as amended to date on the rights and freedoms that are guaranteed by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. B, invite the Minister of Canadian Heritage and the Minister of Justice to appear before the committee to discuss the implications of Bill C-10 as amended to date for users of social media services, and C, suspend clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-10, notwithstanding the committee's decision of March 26, 2021, until it has received the updated charter statement requested under paragraph A and has heard from the ministers invited under paragraph B. Mr. Chair, that is the end of my motion. And again, I would reiterate how vitally important it is that this committee composed of legislators does its work responsibly and seek this statement from the Justice Minister.
Okay, everybody understand the motion? Have you sent a copy to this, Ms. Harder, to our clerk?
Yes, a copy has been submitted, both in French and English.
All right. Ms. de Bruzen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 2 points. I would like to be very clear because I don't believe that it keeps on being talked around, but there is a clear exclusion that has already been passed by this committee to exclude individuals posting to social media. I need to make that absolutely clear. There is an exclusion for individuals posting content to social media. Beyond that, the Broadcasting Act does not cover content. This is not about moderating content. But I will take one step further and also indicate we are in the middle of a clause by clause. We do not have a completed bill before us. We are still in the process of a clause by clause, and it is simply premature to be taking any moment to review what the impact of the bill would be until we have actually completed the process of determining what that bill would look like.
Mr. Hesfog.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start by saying I agree entirely with Ms. de Bruzen. The preamble of the motion takes a position that I don't agree with. I think that's a flawed interpretation of the removal of Article 3 of the bill. I also believe, as Ms. de Bruzen said, that the bill will continue to be amended. And so for us to stop at each point in the bill, which may not reflect the bill at the end, to ask for updated charter statements is illogical. But furthermore, Mr. Chairman, and more importantly, let me direct you to the Department of Justice website as to what the rules are with respect to charter statements. These charter statements that were put into effect by our government, the Liberal government, basically originally had charter statements only for justice bills. Then on December 13, 2019, through amendments to the Department of Justice Act, we created a new duty on the Minister of Justice to ensure that a charter statement is tabled in Parliament for every justice bill, for every government bill. And the charter statements are a transparency measure intended to inform parliamentary and public debate on a bill and help increase awareness and understanding of the charter. It explicitly states that charter statements are intended to provide information to the public and parliamentarians. Although a bill may change over the course of its passage through Parliament, charter statements reflect the bill at the time of introduction and are not updated. Let me repeat, charter statements reflect the bill at the time of introduction and are not updated. Charter statements are not legal opinions on the constitutionality of a bill. So, Mr. Chairman, for a multiplicity of reasons, number one, that the legislation does not contemplate ever updating a charter statement, and it explicitly states that charter statements reflect the bill at the time of introduction and are not updated. Secondly, because of the fact that we're in the middle of a clause by clause debate on the bill, and if it were to be updated at any point for whatever reason, if that was permissible, it would only make sense to do so at the end of debate of the bill, once all the amendments had been adopted and one knew what the legislation would look like. I am against this motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Aitchison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that I think this is actually a very wise move, just because to Mr. Bruzen's point about a section in this bill that protects users, she's referring, I think, to Section 2.1, which does protect users specifically, but the removal of Section 4.1, it refers specifically to the programs that the users use to upload their content. And I think that we need to be really, really careful here that it effectively what I think this is doing is pushing the regulatory impacts on users. They're actually shifting that to the programs themselves. And so, I think that we need to be careful and frankly, having a new charter statement, a review of this may have tremendous impacts as we continue the clause by clause. I realize that the Liberals really want to rush this through and they want to get it done because they didn't do it, in the first 5 years they had. But I think it behooves us to make sure that we do this very, very carefully and make sure that something as fundamental as freedom of expression for Canadians is not hindered in any way, um, by any moves we make here. This is fundamental to our democracy, our way of life, and to ask a Liberal justice minister for a review of it, I think is a very reasonable compromise to make sure that as we proceed and as we continue to go clause by clause, that we're doing so, ensuring that we are not in any way infringing on Canadians' fundamental freedom of expression.
Un rappel au règlement, Monsieur le Président, s'il vous plaît.
A point of order.
Sorry, Mr. Aitchison. I have a point of order from Mr. Champoux.
Moi, je suis désolé d'interrompre, Monsieur.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Aitchison. I think the debate is very gripping, but I haven't received the motion in French. Ms. Harder said she sent it in both languages. I do not have the motion in French, and to be able to discuss it, I would very much like to have a copy in French of the tabled motion. Could the clerk send one, please?
Oh, sorry. I believe I got a thumbs up. She's sending it. Yes. Okay. I think she is. I tell you what, Mr. Champoux, I'm going to go to Ms. Harder first. If you don't receive the next little while, just let us know. Thank you. Ms. Harder.
Sorry, I don't actually believe the floor is mine. Or are you looking for me
Yes,
to respond?
it is. Go ahead. Oh, you're next on the raised hand function, so go ahead. Oh, sorry.
My colleague, Mr.
Oh,
Aitchison, was interrupted.
your hand was up earlier. I apologize. Yes, and so Mr. Aitchison was interrupted.
My hand
correct.
is up, but yeah, Mr. Aitchison.
Yeah,
is,
my eye was off the ball there for a moment. Good catch, Ms. Harder. Mr. Aitchison, back to you without any prejudice, of course.
None taken. Anyhow, I think I was sort of summing up my point, though, that making sure we get this right is far more important than us getting it done quickly. I have real concerns that shifting the onus onto the programs that individual Canadians use it opens up too many questions, and I think it makes it very concerning that the CRTC, while maybe wouldn't do it, would have the ability and the authority to start regulating individual Canadians' content that they post to social media. This is the fear that I have. Freedoms aren't taken away in one fell swoop in societies. They're chipped away at bit by bit by bit, all under the cover of some important protection of Canadians from some some fear that we should have. This is well worth taking a pause, asking for a review by the Justice Minister to make sure that we're not getting this wrong. This is so fundamental to our way of life and to the freedoms that Canadians expect. We need to make sure we get it right, and that's the reason why I think it's a wise pause. We're asking a Liberal Minister of Justice as well. This is not a partisan issue, I don't think. I think that this is good governance, making sure we take the time to get this right. That's all that we're asking for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Harder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I to Mr. Brusen's point, there are two sections that were originally within this bill having to do with individuals. One had to do with individual users, and one has to do with the programs that those individuals might use in order to convey their message or the material that they're wishing to share. The section having to do with users is still intact. The section having to do with the programs that users use was removed. So if an individual uses YouTube, or if they use Facebook, or if they use TikTok, or if they use Twitter, they are going to be held to the regulations within the CRTC in terms of how those programs are used. That is a direct imposition on their freedom. And I'm not necessarily the one that is arguing this on my own. In fact, when Ms. DeBruzen first brought forward the idea that the section 3 should be removed from the bill, Mr. Owen Ripley had comments to make in that regard. Now, Mr. Owen Ripley, of course, is the Director General, the Broadcasting Copyright and Creative Marketplace branch. And this is what he said. These are his words. He said, Ms. DeBruzen has signaled the government intends to repeal Section 4.1. Now, at that point, it was only an intent. Now it's been followed through on. He goes on to say, meaning that there would no longer be any exclusion for social media services at all. For the benefit of the committee, in our previous sessions, the committee upheld the exclusion for users of social media companies. In other words, when you or I upload something to YouTube or some other sharing service, we will not be considered broadcasters for the purposes of the Act. The CRTC couldn't call us before them, and we wouldn't be subject to CRTC hearings. But if the exclusion is removed, if 4.1 is struck down, as it was last week, the programming we upload to YouTube, that programming that we place on that service would be subject to regulation moving forward, but would be the responsibility of YouTube or whatever the sharing service is. It is very important to note his words here, that it would be subject to regulation moving forward. Those are his words. This is an expert. So for Ms. DeBruzen to try to mislead this committee and for the government to try to mislead Canadians into thinking that they wouldn't be impacted by this change is wrong. And if they are not scared to have this challenged, then why not allow for a charter statement to be redrafted based on the change that has been made last week? Now, of course, Mr. Ripley is not the only one who provided that type of commentary. In addition to that, the former CRTC commissioner, Peter Menzies, which I would hope if we are going to listen to any expert, we would want to listen to his words. And he said that this legislation doesn't just infringe on free expression, it constitutes a full-blown assault upon it, and through it, the foundations of democracy. That is an extremely strong statement. He also stated, it's difficult to contemplate the levels of moral hubris, incompetence, or both that would lead people to believe such an infringement of rights is justifiable. Mr. Chair, this is a huge issue, And for us to move forward as a committee with little to no regard for wanting to protect the charter rights of Canadians is frightening. We like the charter. I mean, we post this proudly on our walls as members of Parliament. We talk about it in the House of Commons with passion. We defend it rigorously. At least that's what we used to do. For us to treat it as if it's just a suggestive document rather than the supreme law of the land is shame on us. So to suggest that we can just move forward, that it's not a big deal, or that we'll just wait until the end, which probably isn't true, is wrong. It's so wrong. And Canadians deserve better. Canadians deserve to have their charter rights protected. Canadians deserve that the members of this committee would wish to seek greater clarity. You know, Michael Geist, a law professor at the University of Ottawa and the Canada Research Chair in Internet and E-commerce Law, he said this. He said, quote, the government believes that it should regulate all user-generated content, leaving it to the regulator to determine on what terms and conditions will be attached to the videos of millions of Canadians on sites like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and hundreds of other services. That's his quote. He is an expert in this field, and that is his quote. That is what he is saying. He is raising a massive red flag with regard to the part of this bill that was removed last week, and thereby removing protection for individuals and their use of social media, the content that they post on the various platforms that are available to them. And for us to move forward with little regard for the words spoken by the former CRTC Commissioner Peter Menzies or Michael Geist, a law professor at the University of Ottawa and an expert in this area, or Mr. Owen Ripley, who is the Director General Broadcasting, Copyright and Creative Marketplace, for us to move forward and to pretend that somehow as individual members of Parliament, we know better is incredibly pompous and incredibly irresponsible on us. And I believe that we have an opportunity here to do the right thing. And so I'm confused as to why the members wouldn't wish to do that, why we wouldn't wish to push the pause button and seek a charter statement. That's simply what we're asking for here. And if the charter statement comes back and says, no problem, this is in alignment with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, then I guess it's the prerogative of the government to put that legislation through if they have the votes within the House of Commons. However, the whole point of clause by clause is to carefully analyze the legislation that is before this committee and to ask good questions and to seek clarification and to make sure that we are doing the right thing, that we are acting in the best interest of Canadians. And as of right now, based on the things that have been spoken by the experts I have listed, I am concerned that this bill, as it stands right now with the amendments that have been made, goes too far and that it does infringe on those rights and freedoms of Canadians. Mr. Chair, my request is very simple. I am respectfully asking that we push the pause button, that we seek a charter statement, and that we then move forward after we have that statement, and that we do so in the best interest of Canadians, fighting for their freedom and defending their voice, and ultimately standing by what we call the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which in Section 2B offers protection for people's freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression. And that thought, belief, opinion, and expression can take place in this reality that we call non-virtual, as well as the reality that we call virtual, such as social media platforms or apps. And Mr. Speaker, I believe that we need to make sure that we're contending for that we're protecting that we're making sure that we are on the side of Canadians and the supreme law of the land.
Mr. Reyes.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just lower my hand to be sure that I let other people take the floor after me. Mr. Chair, I would like to comment on Ms. Harder's speech. I find it very valid. At the beginning, our intent was to revise the Broadcasting Act. It's quite an old act. And I think that from the get-go, everyone wanted to collaborate with the government, with the Liberals. Witnesses shared their concerns with us. They told us what parts of the bill they were for or against. And all committee members from all parties unanimously agreed to study this bill, which some were concerned about, and we even went into a pre-study of the bill. We were not trying to hold anything up, as might have been claimed in the media. We started things early. Once the debate in the House was finished, everyone was prepared to cooperate so that major players in the digital world, such as Netflix, could be regulated in the same way as our Canadian broadcasters, as we call them, conventional broadcasters. So it was a very laudable and healthy objective that everyone shared. Many people criticized the government for not having included GAFA or for not having included CBC's mandate in the bill. We did our work. We did our job. We heard from all of the experts. And we arrived at this stage, which we've been participating in for a few weeks now, the clause-by-clause consideration. 118 amendments were tabled by the various parties. And this just goes to show how many gaps there were in the original bill. 37 amendments from the Green Party, many from other parties, 27 from the government itself. So in total, 118 amendments, and everyone cooperated together, working by way of sub-amendments to reach agreements, including on the question of French, which everyone agreed on, for example. But what happened last Friday was a shock for everyone, and I include myself in that. The minister, through his parliamentary secretary, who is present, and through the other members of parliament in his party, decided to completely delete a section. And what is the result? Influencers, and people don't realize this, but in Quebec, there are not many media companies talking about what's happening, but it does have an impact on our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And the result is that influencers, YouTubers, people who have a side hobby, having their YouTube channels, will be regulated by the CRTC. We gave the power to the CRTC to regulate them. I want to believe the minister when he tells us during question period that that is not the government's intent. But if that were true, that decision would not have been made. Now we're not talking about the same thing at all anymore. Now we're talking about a bill, or rather what we wanted was for these major digital players to be regulated in the same way as conventional broadcasters. But now no guidelines are in place to direct the CRTC. Originally, our duty was to revise the bill to create a protective, tight framework to protect the rights that flow from the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, some might say that this is an attempt by the opposition to hold up the bill, but that's not the case at all. The quotes that we just heard are from experts, and Ms. Harder highlighted a few, and I won't go back and repeat all of them, but there was an emeritus professor of law from the University of Ottawa. Some might ask about the status of this professor. Well, I'll tell you that he is very well esteemed. He's a researcher. He supports other professors in their work. He is an expert in the field. And on April 1st, he received hundreds of thousands of dollars for his work. His work is extremely credible. And I can tell you that as a parliamentarian, though I'm not an expert in the field, this, for me, is like a flashing yellow light that tells me that we're getting close to the red light. We need to have a look at things. And Mr. Menzies, who also worked for the CRTC, also commented. And I would like to bring this to everyone's attention.
Broadcasting, les amis de la
Friends of Canadian Broadcasting was a witness that came to committee repeatedly. Daniel Bernhard, they have been sounding the alarm repeatedly. They started very early shedding light on risks, the risks of Section 4.1 specifically, even before we started clause by clause. And now we have removed this essential section, which was a safeguard for citizens and users of these platforms everywhere in the country. And we've heard from a wide range of experts, university professors, among others, who flashed the yellow light. I would even say the red light, and they've been doing so for years, for months. So, Mr. Chair, with all due respect for everyone, I believe that Ms. Harder's request is completely valid. It's just to ask for the Liberal Minister of Justice to share his opinion with us on what he himself wrote for us to protect users of online platforms in this bill that we are currently studying. So, Mr. Chair, I would dare to dream that as a committee we have the wisdom to work together, as we have been from the beginning, and to admit that we have made a mistake. And if the minister is acting in good faith and that this wasn't his true intent, we can admit there was a mistake made. I think we're about a week away from carrying this bill. We don't want to hold anything up. The committee has made every effort for things to go smoothly. I hope that the minister will stop criticizing us in this way. We did not or rather, he was mistaken in asking the committee to delete Section 4.1. Please, I would ask all members to support this motion. Let us listen to the Minister of Justice, and then after that, let's get back to work so that the Broadcasting Act can be carried and so that we can have a new framework to regulate major online broadcasters in the same way as our conventional broadcasters. I thank Ms. Harder for her expertise and for her participation and for sending that message to everyone, which will help members to make the right decision. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Waugh.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, I'm a former broadcaster like many on this committee, and we all know, whether you're from the government side or the opposition side, that C10 needed to be updated. It hadn't been updated in over 30 years. In fact, the internet wasn't even around the last time this bill came forward. So, in the last several months, we've all talked about this bill, and you know, it was interesting hearing from all the stakeholders, and that's all I'm going to say, because the stakeholders have been looking at this bill for the last 5 years. They wanted a good bill to come out of committee so that they can put it on the wall and follow the regulations. We know that the conventional broadcasters, and we've heard from them in committee, are deeply hurting in this country. It doesn't matter if you're a big supplier of television and radio like Bell or Rogers, or if you're just a local radio station by yourself in Kamloops or wherever. You know that this bill is major in the industry right now. I would say not only because of COVID-19, it slowed it up a little bit, but I think, Mr. Chair, you also being a former broadcaster would also agree that the landscape in this country has changed dramatically. And it's changed because of the internet. It's changed because of the digital players. All of us know that. Many of us in this country no longer subscribe to cable. We've seen the numbers drop, and maybe for good reason, but you know, they're getting their news now from Facebook. They know what their families are doing across this country because of Facebook. So, you know, when you seek a charter statement on this, I don't know about you, but I've had literally 300 calls this week, specifically since last Friday, calls and emails from constituents really worried about the freedoms, the rights and freedoms of Canadians. Many of us go on and upload messages to family because, in my statement, you know, I've got a brother out in Vancouver that I haven't seen maybe in 4 or 5 years. And, you know, I have a nephew right now that has made the Prince Albert Raiders. I'm just going to share this with you. Made the Prince Albert Raiders, and they had a bubble in Regina that I could maybe go and see them play because they had a 24-game schedule here in Regina. I couldn't go because of COVID, which I understand. So how do I reach out to Niall Crocker and his family? And this is not only me, this is every family in the country that want the freedom socially to do some of this that we have done for years now. But when 4.1 came along last Friday and changed the field, that all of a sudden, holy man, now we've gone into uncharted territory. It's uncharted because when you have a former chair of the CRTC raising a flag, I can tell you, Ian Scott read his statement. Ian Scott, the current chair of the CRTC. What we don't want, I think, as legislatures, is the CRTC, non-elected, telling people in Canada what they can and can't do on the internet, upload, so on. I think Michael Geist was right on. I think every newspaper this week in this country, not only the Sun newspapers, the National Post, the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, and so on, has really come to the forefront with this story because it matters to Canadians. The newspaper industry, as we know, is hurting in this country, but I would say this as a former broadcaster, they probably got more input this week because of this bill than any other government bill in the last 2 weeks that has been debated in Parliament, because they know it's an infringement of rights. And I agree with Ms. Harder and Mr. Reyes. Maybe we should get a legal opinion from the Justice Minister on the Charter Statement on rights and freedoms. And people in this country, because they've been locked down, Mr. Chair, and you know it more than anybody because you're back in the Maritimes right now. This is really hard on them. We've had, particularly in this country, we're fighting the anti-maskers and people that don't believe in vaccines. And then all of a sudden, this bill hits the airwaves from last Friday, and in particular, the last 5 days in this country, and people are up to here. They want their rights and freedoms restored if they've been diminished. And this bill from last Friday on 4.1 has diminished the rights. You might not say that, but it's there. And when you have a former chair of the CRTC raising awareness before we even get to the finish of clause by clause, that's enough for me. Mr. Menzies was well respected as chair of the CRTC for years. Mr. Scott, in his position, I am sure, has had the dialogue over what is happening in committee. And I want to say thank you, Mr. Ripley, and to all the Heritage staff. You have been magnificent on clause by clause, giving an opinion on our amendments going forward and giving us a sense of what is needed in this bill, because we're only going to get one shot at this. This took 31 years to get renewed, and it may take another 31 years to move it forward. The stakeholders are watching. We know that. We're still getting emails from all our stakeholders that want one-on-one meetings. I'm getting them every day from everybody, and in particular over what happened last Friday with the government removing 4.1. So I'll just wrap it up there. I think we need to pause this right now, and we can get a clarification from the Justice Minister. I've seen quotes in newspapers. Let's get this bill right. That's why we're here. That's why we got elected. We got elected to do the right thing for Canadians, to bring a bill forward that needs to be updated. All of us on the committee, all 11 of us on this committee agree this bill needs to get right. And so when we saw what happened this last week with Canadians up in arms over this bill, and they are up in arms over it, I think that was the flag for all of us, just to say, look, let's get an interpretation. And then once we get that interpretation from the Justice Minister, good or bad, we can move on with this bill. But we all agree in this committee. We've got along so well, and we still are, but we want this broadcasting bill to be right. And I see no problem pausing, getting a clarification, and then picking it up and moving it out. We've got, 7-8 weeks in the House of Commons. What's the difference if we bring this out May 10th or June 10th? The difference is we better get it right. Canadians are looking for us to get it right. So that is my comment, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your time and your willingness to hear from all of us here today. Thank you.
Mr. Waugh, thank you very much. If I may be so bold for a point of clarification, I am from Newfoundland and Labrador. We were never really officially part of the Maritimes, but I appreciate the spirit in which you put it forward. No offense to my Nova Scotia PER and New Brunswick colleagues. To Mr. Brusen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the debate be now adjourned.
Okay, everyone heard the dilatory motion. I'm sure you all know what that means.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, sir. This is a dilatory motion. I have to proceed directly to the vote on adjournment. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. On the motion to adjourn debate of the motion of Ms. Harder. Mr. Housefather.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. I want to make sure I understand.
Mr. Reyes, we have to proceed. This is a dilatory motion. I'm sure you know what that is by now. It's a serious thing that we deal with. We have to go directly to the vote as dictated by the standing orders.
Mr. Chair, my hand was raised long before.
Monsieur le Président, je sais c'est quoi une motion dilatoire.
Mr. Chair, I understand it's a dilatory motion, but I have a question.
At the right-hand side, but going to the order of the speaking, I have to go with Ms. de Brusen. She has called for a dilatory motion. Madam Clerk.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, my apologies, Ms. Harder. This is a dilatory motion.
Mr. Chair,
I've already ruled on this several times.
To a vote when there are still hands that are raised.
But Ms. de Brusen had her hand raised. She speaks before the other people that have their hands up. She called for an adjournment, which is a dilatory, which means we have to go to it immediately.
I would ask that you seek the clerk.
I'm seeking the clerk actually to do a vote. That's what we're supposed to do in a dilatory motion. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Just to clarify exactly what we're voting on, Ms. Bruson, just please nod if I've gotten this right. We are a motion to adjourn debate on the motion of Ms. Harder.
That is correct.
Thank you very much. So that is what we are currently voting on. If you vote nay, a debate will adjourn on the motion of Ms. Harder.
If you vote yay,
Did I say nay? If you vote
Yeah.
yay, we're
Mr.
Yes,
voting to
okay.
adjourn debate.
Point
If
of
you could say
order.
yay, we will adjourn
Ms.
debate on
Harder,
the
Ms.
motion of Ms.
Harder,
Harder.
if you require, I can ask the clerk to do this one more time, if that's what you're asking. But again, I have to insist that
Mr.
this is
Chair,
a dilatory motion
it's-
that was put forward by
I
Ms.
understand.
DeBruzen. She's
I
in,
understand.
I'm not sure you do, because I have to go to this. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be hard to get along with. I'm only trying to uphold the rules by which we govern ourselves in committee and in the House of Commons. This is a dilatory motion. This is where we have to go. That
But
is,
there are
there
still
is no
hands
debate.
raised.
But she just moved a motion, Ms. Harder, which means she goes first. Now, if this doesn't work, then the other hands will be recognized as such. It's fairly clear. Ms. Clerk, Madam Clerk, please go to the vote.
Yes, sir. One more time. And just to be clear, so that I haven't confused anyone, this is a motion to adjourn debate on the motion of Ms. Harder. If you vote yes, yay to adjourn debate, debate will then adjourn. If you vote nay, then the discussion will continue on the motion of Ms. Harder. Mr. Housefather,
yes.
Madame Bissette,
Yes.
Ms. DeBruson,
Yes.
Ms. Ian,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Monsieur Reyes,
No.
Mr. Aitchison,
No.
Mr. Shields.
I believe that's me. No.
No,
No,
no.
you are not substituted in. Mr. Shields is in the room. Mr. Shields?
Point of order.
No,
Deputy Ray Chartle is substituted in.
Mr. Shields, the way this works is,
Hey,
and I'm
no.
sorry if there's any, the way this works is that if you are logged in, then you are present. You are a permanent member of the committee. Now, I don't think we can beleaguer this much longer, only because this is the new world we are in. We've been in it now for close to a year. So you are logged in, you are the permanent member. Please proceed to vote.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Waugh?
No.
Mr. Shampoo?
No.
Ms. McPherson?
Yes.
6 yeas, 5 nays.
Okay, debate now be adjourned. Madam Clerk, I believe we're going back to you again this time. Oh,
Un
sorry.
rappel au règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
1 second. 1 second. Sorry, folks. My audio having problems there. Okay, debate now be adjourned.
Rappel au
Proceed
règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
votes. Oh, no. When now debate has been adjourned.
On the motion of Ms. Harder.
Yeah, motion, Mr. Harder, yes, okay.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Can everybody hear me? All right. All right, okay, because my screen is a bit sketchy here. I apologize.
Monsieur le Président, vous
Mr. Chair, can you hear me? Point of order.
Merci.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Shampoo.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, I understand that we voted on Ms. DeBruzen's dilatory motion, and I understand that because of that motion, my turn to take the floor was discounted, but there's still debate to be had on Ms. Harder's motion. I had an amendment to propose, and you can check the order of hands raised, but I'm about 100% sure that my hand had been raised before Ms. DeBruzen, and I was about to propose an amendment to Ms. Harder's motion, but that was not allowed because you gave the floor to another committee member before me, and I want to highlight that I seriously consider that to be unfair.
Mr. Shampoo, I as you can see by the right hand of your screen, it dictates as to who puts up their hand first. Now, whether there was a problem in the machine, I don't know, but Ms. DeBruzen's name was there, and then it was yours. I have to go by what I see on the right hand of the screen. I apologize if you feel that there's something nefarious involved here, but surely there wasn't. I go by what I've been given as for the right side of the Zoom screen, as it were. But duly noted, I will make sure in the future that I will follow it. Now we go to Ms. Harder.
Mr. Chair, I would issue a challenge to your earlier ruling. According to the procedures, a motion to adjourn debate can only be issued once every hand that has been raised with regard to that debate has been acknowledged and given the opportunity to speak.
Ms. Harder, like the ruling that I made is I have to stick with it. It is one that is a dilatory motion to do that. If you wish, I can confer with the clerks to seek clarification, to seek assurances that what we're doing is right.
I
can
would.
do
I
that.
would absolutely, because
Sure.
according to the procedures that I am reading in front of me
Okay,
that are
Ms.
on
Harder.
the House of Commons website, we cannot adjourn debate until every hand that has been raised has been acknowledged and those individuals have been given an opportunity to speak.
Okay, Ms. Harder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to seek the clarification that you asked me for with the clerk.
I
will
would ask for a
suspend
reference to the
for
page.
very, very
Thank you.
short 2 minutes. Thank you very much. And don't forget, folks, please don't speak until I recognize you, because it's hard for Hansard to do their job as it is. I'm just trying to make life easier for them. So suspend for just a few short minutes. Please stand by. Issue about other people speaking. Sorry, let me just turn off my phone. I was going to read to you from this book, but apparently I have the second edition. The clerk has the third edition. She's far, as like everything else, she's far more advanced than I am. So I'm going to ask her to read the particular place within the standing orders which clarifies what you're asking. Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You might hear double because I believe that this phone is still on. So on page 1067 of Procedure and Practice, a dilatory motion is a motion designed to dispose of the original question before the committee, either for the time being or permanently. Dilatory motions do not require notice, nor can they be amended or debated. They are therefore put to a vote immediately. And that the main type of motion that is a dilatory motion would be that the debate be now adjourned, which is what Mr. Bruson moved. So if the committee chooses to adjourn debate on the motion, then that question is closed for the time being. The committee can bring it back at whatever point it wishes to, but it's closed for the moment, and debate continues on the next order of business.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we go to C10 is for the day. As mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about G10. G10 is the first amendment. That's where we left off last time, if you recall. G10, I see Ms. DeBruzen.
Point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président.
Wait.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
I see Ms. Harder's hand up, and it's first in line, so I got to follow that. Ms. Harder.
Point d'ordre, Monsieur.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Reyes.
Président, point d'ordre.
Point of order, go ahead.
Oui, point.
Yes. Very simple. It is 2:30. You told me that if we wanted to have a health break, I needed to bring it up. I just would like to ask for 2 quick minutes so everyone can go grab a drink of water and use the facilities if needed. Thank you. Much appreciated.
J'aurais aimé le faire avant, Monsieur.
I would have liked to bring it up earlier, Mr. Chair, but the debate was so heated, I didn't want to miss it.
Yes, we were overbrimming with excitement there for a while. So how about we go on our health break? Well-deserved one. And I did say I would have one when you brought it up. Folks, within 4 minutes, we'll see you soon. We'll just suspend 4 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. All right, we're going to resume this once again. I'm going to turn to my speakers list here. I want to go with Ms. Harder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, believing that the motion that I've laid out on the table is of utmost importance, I would move a motion that we return to debate, that it resume. With regards to the motion that I have put before this committee, which of course asks for a new statement from the Justice Minister with regards to whether or not Bill C-10 in its current state does in fact respect the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Okay, Ms. Harder, just so that you know, page 1062 of the third edition states, if the debate is adjourned without the committee taking a decision, it may resume, may resume debate at another meeting. I hope that's clear. We can't resume with the same debate at this point. We have to do it at another meeting. That's quite clear within the third edition. Okay, seeing nothing further, Ms. DeBruzen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next amendment, the next motion we were dealing with is G10. And this is concerns Canadian ownership. This is something that we have focused on as being a very important issue. And this is the power that would allow the CRTC to review changes in ownership to make sure that Canadian ownership rules are being properly respected.
Okay, any further conversation? Again, we're on Amendment G10. Mr. Aitchison, sorry. Should know that by now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a common mistake and it's made frequently, so I understand. I would actually propose a sub-amendment, G10, to add the words that is not an online undertaking. So after the words, so in G10 it reads, in any change in the ownership or control of a broadcasting undertaking, and then insert there the words that is not an online undertaking, and then carry on.
Okay, so I'll just repeat what Mr. Aitchison said so that everyone's clear. I think it's pretty straightforward. Let's go to H.1. Any change in the ownership or control of a broadcasting undertaking, but not an online undertaking, carried on under a license. Is that? I'm looking to you, Mr. Aitchison, for clarification. You're including not online undertaking. Go ahead. Am I correct?
Sorry, I was nodding. Yes, that is correct.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So everyone understands the sub-amendment? We now go to, I don't see anybody. Okay, so we are now in the middle of the sub-amendment by Mr. Aitchison, sub-amending G10. Shall the sub-amendment carry? Carried? I apologize. I just see people turning off their mics. Look like they wanted to speak. Okay, so carried.
I'm confused, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Housefather.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused here. We moved to a vote on what exactly, like if we're moving to a vote on Mr. Aitchison's sub-amendment, I actually had a question for him, well, for the department on it.
I see. Oh, well, okay. If you wish to go with your question, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to understand the carving out of online undertakings from this section means that those I'd like to just confirm with Mr. Ripley, that would mean then that online undertakings that are broadcasting undertakings would not be covered, and therefore the commission would not be able then to look at the change of ownership of control of such an online undertaking. Would that be the sense? It would be a complete carve out, and the CRTC would no longer have the power to look into the ownership or control of an online undertaking.
Mr. Ripley.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Housefather. So just the amendment actually, as currently drafted, as members of the committee will note, talks about undertakings that are carried on under a license, and the way that Bill C10 is structured, as you may recall, is that online undertakings actually do not need to hold a license, and so the amendment that Mr. Aitchison is proposing is actually already in line with the amendment as currently drafted, because an online undertaking is not required to hold a license to begin with. And so this power is just ensuring that the CRTC, as you may know, does indeed review ownership transactions in the conventional broadcasting world, so conventional broadcasters, cable and satellite companies. And this is to just ensure that it can continue to review those transactions moving forward, given that we're moving to a conditions of service model instead of a conditions of license model. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley. Mr. Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question for Mr. Ripley. So Crave, owned by Bell, is this, maybe talk to that situation, because right now in Canada, that would be probably the only one that I can relate to, you know, that Bell owns Crave. And would this change anything at all on this?
Mr. Ripley.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Waugh. So the question would hinge on whether Crave is a licensed undertaking or not. It's an online undertaking, but because it's part of a larger corporate family, it would depend on exactly kind of its operating, the way that it's operated. My understanding is right now that it does operate under the exemption order, and therefore is not part of any licensed activity of Bell. And so again, this power would not apply in the case of you know, an ownership transaction involving the division of Crave, so to speak. Just confirm that, Mr. Chair, that maybe my colleague, Mr. Olson, whether he just wishes to add anything to that.
Mr. Olson. Apparently no.
Thank you. No, that was what I would have said. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, folks. Okay, we now move on. Okay, seeing no further discussion. Again, we are on the sub-amendment from Mr. Waugh regarding Amendment G10.
Actually, Mr. Chair, it would be from Mr. Aitchison. Not from
Mr. Aitchison, I apologize. See, you were right there, sir. You're top of mind, except it should have been Mr. Aitchison. No reflection on you, Mr. Aitchison.
We share a name, Mr. Chair. I would
yes,
think
I know.
Be less dismissive of me, my goodness.
You would think. So we are on sub-amendments to G10 put forward by my fellow Scotsman. Shall the sub-amendment carry? Hearing silence, carried. We now go to the main amendment. That would be G10. G10, Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As another Scot, I'll jump in with another sub-amendment if I can. I would like to sub-amend the wording to say, instead of a broadcasting undertaking carried on under a license, with Canadian broadcasting undertakings.
So just so I get this right, H.1, any change in the ownership or control of a Canadian broadcasting undertaking? Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you're just simply inserting the word Canadian. I don't think we need anything formal than that. Everybody understand? Okay, seeing a common comprehension. I see Mr. Reyes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could the senior officials with us today explain the impact of that change?
Yep, certainly can. Mr. Ripley.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Reyes, for the question. In fact, the answer is similar to the answer I gave to Mr. Aitchison or to Mr. Waugh. That is, currently, as you know, there's a directive that stipulates that only Canadians can be license holders. So only Canadian undertakings can hold a license in Canada. So I would say that the amendment as it is in exactly the same line of thinking. Regarding licenses to Broadcasting Canada.
Okay, I see Mr. Housefather.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just want perhaps Ms. McPherson to consider, based on that answer, that this may create confusion. I don't know where else in the Act we talk only about Canadian broadcasting undertakings. And by referring to Canadian here, it might imply that those broadcasting undertakings other than Canadian may be eligible to get a license, which they're not under the Act. So I'm actually would be a bit concerned about doing that, because then we would be saying that somebody other than a Canadian broadcasting undertaking could actually perhaps be eligible for a license. But I leave it to her to consider. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues. So what I see with this amendment, or the sub-amendment, sorry, is that this will protect Canadian ownership of Canadian online companies. So that's it's just going to strengthen it, and I think that's important. It provides that additional coverage. That's why I put forward the sub-amendment. I don't think it causes confusion. I think if anything, it strengthens it.
Okay. Seeing no, yes, I do. Mr. Waugh.
Yeah, I just have to get a clarification here. Let's take TSN, owned by Bell and partially owned by ABC/ESPN in the United States. So how would this affect them if they decide someday to pull TSN off conventional television and just go like they are right now in the United States, doing a lot of streaming? So would this, and I guess maybe I'm asking department officials too for a clarification on this, because TSN is partially owned, I believe, in the United States by ESPN/ABC. They have agreements. And I am concerned when you come to Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football, all of a sudden TSN Canada has the rights and they've decided to not put it on conventional television and instead do the streaming on it. So does that play anything into effect here with the word Canadian broadcasting added to it? Maybe Mr. Ripley or Mr. Owen?
Mr. Ripley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Waugh. Again, to the extent that a broadcasting undertaking was to migrate to being an online undertaking, i.e., does not require a license to operate, there would be no this power, this amendment for the CRTC to make orders respecting changes in ownership or control would not apply to that online undertaking. The reason for this amendment is right now, when there is an ownership transaction, there's a change in license typically, and that change of license provides an opportunity for the CRTC to assess whether there needs to be any changes in condition as part of that ownership transaction. And so what this is doing is seeking to ensure that the CRTC continues to have the ability that if there is an ownership transaction, again, in the conventional broadcasting market involving a cable or satellite company or something like that, that it has the ability to impose conditions as part of that transaction, right? So if you want to sell that business division to this other company over here, CRTC will look at whether it authorizes that or not, but it may decide to impose conditions as part of that transaction for a variety of reasons, and this power is making sure that the CRTC can continue to do that.
Okay, I see Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to add a comment. I would like to commend the work of our senior officials who are with us today, clarifying things when we're talking about sub-amendments. I would also like to commend Kevin Wavick with all of his expertise. He's given very concrete examples, like the most recent one he gave. And sometimes I get lost in all of this legislative jargon. So when he gives me examples of Canadian companies that might be potentially controlled by foreign entities and so forth, this really helps me to better understand all of the details in this act that we're working together on. And he celebrated his years of service in the sector not too long ago. So I wanted to highlight the expertise of everyone who is helping us get through this process on Bill C-10.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Great sentiments. Mr. Wah.
Yeah, one other point, because we have seen Rogers and Shaw talk about a merger. I wonder if this plays to Shaw. They're kind of out of the business now, although they still have community television stations. So how would this amendment affect Shaw if they are sold to Rogers? And I know that's, that's maybe a year away or whatever. And I'm just throwing it out there because all of a sudden now Shaw owns the conventional, the local community stations across the country. They own several right now. Would this be affected with the change here today by Ms. McPherson?
Mr. Olson. Oh, sorry. I had Mr. Olson's hand up. And Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Waugh, for the question. Shaw operates many broadcasting distribution undertakings, or what we call cable systems. And so most of those are operated under licenses, unless they're small cable systems, which have been exempted by the CRTC from requirement to hold a license. So for the extent that they hold a license, they would still be covered under the amendment that would say that the change of ownership for an entity, a Canadian broadcasting undertaking carried on under a license. So they would still be required to get a license. Or sorry, they still have a license, and then the CRTC would thus have the power under this subsection to put conditions of service around any change in ownership.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Seeing no further discussion, this is now where we are still on the sub-amendment from Ms. McPherson regarding Canadian broadcasting. Shall this sub-amendment carry?
No.
I hear no. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Actually, can we just pass it on division, Mr. Chair?
My apologies. You wish to carry on division?
Non, je demande le vote.
No, I would like the recorded vote.
Yes, sir. The vote on the sub-amendment by Ms. McPherson. Mr. Housefather.
Yes.
Madame Bessette.
Oui.
Ms. DeBruson.
Yes.
Ms. Ian.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Monsieur Reyes.
No.
Mr. Aitchison.
No.
Ms. Harder.
No.
Ms. Harder, I'm sorry, can you turn your video on?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Waugh.
No.
Mr. Shampoo.
En faveur.
Ms. McPherson.
Yes.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
And the sub-amendment carries. Now we go back to the main amendment as amended. This is again G10. Seeing no further discussion, we now go to a vote. Shall G10 as amended carry?
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, could you just reread the section as amended?
Yes, I'm going to call on, I didn't get the first part, the second part I got. So I'm going to call on Mr. Mila if he has it there, to read the what as amended?
I do, Mr. Chair. Would you like the French version or the English version? Or both?
En français is good.
En français, oui. Donc, H.
So H1, any change in the ownership or control of a Canadian broadcasting undertaking, comma, that is not an online undertaking, comma, carried on under a license.
Okay. Shall G10 carry as amended?
Non.
No. Okay.
On division?
Avec un vote, s'il vous plaît.
With a vote, please.
Recorded vote, Madam Clerk.
Very much, sir, on G10 as amended. Mr. Housefather.
Sorry, Mr. Housefather, can you? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, thank you, sir. Madame Bissette?
Oui.
Mr. Bruson?
Yes.
Ms. Ian?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Monsieur Reyes?
Non.
Mr. Aitchison?
No.
Ms. Harder?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Waugh?
No.
Mr. Champoux?
Oui.
Ms. McPherson?
Yes.
7 yeas, 4 nays. Mr. Sims? 7 yeas, 4 nays.
Sorry. If I start talking and you can't hear me, because it happened a little while ago during the vote, please hold your hand like this so I catch it right away. That helps me greatly. Regarding the vote, yes, G10 carries as amended. Well, we've had such a blast today that time has just flown right by. This is the part where we have to depart, and you say, have a wonderful and bon fin semaine, everyone. We'll see you on Monday. Okay, folks, have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Oui, oui.